Ladies and gentlemen, this is your final boarding call for the good ship SS Tomorrow.
Today on The Friendly Futurists, where does Australia sit in 2025 in terms of the renewable energy transition? And welcome back, and we'll chat to our guest, Gavin from Kaluza, very shortly. But today we want to see what the state of play of one of my favourite pet topics. That is the transition away from fossil fuels into renewables. And today's guest, Gavin Mooney, is all about enabling people making that switch, that transition, right here in Australia. Now, this is an ongoing topic, and I've got some previous guests. If you want to go back, feel free to go back to Season 1, Episode 13, where I chat to Dan Illich from Irrational Fear, or Season 5, Episode 10, where I chat potential for renewable energy with Professor Peter Clinken, the Chief Scientist of Western Australia, or go back to Series 8, Episode 9, where I chat to Brianna from Renewable, all about carbon offsets and an alternative for them through the blockchain. Or go back to Season 10, Episode 2, where I chat about a project from Green Tuk Tuks. Or even go back to Season 11, Episode 3 with Kathy Clennett, where I chat about green hydrogen. There's loads of previous stuff here. I'm ongoing. This is going to be a main focus. This is going from 2025 onwards. I think this is very important. At the time of recording, December 2024, we just made an announcement down here in Western Australia, in Kwinana. We're building one of the world's first green steel mills. So, very exciting times ahead. I think the tide is turning away from fossil fuels. Anyhow, Gavin from Kaluza is coming up after the break. Welcome back to another episode, and we're continuing our series on the transition of renewable energy, and we've got a very special guest. We've got Gavin Mooney from Kaluza. Gavin, welcome.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. Now, as with all my guests, can you just give us a quick rundown on your journey so far and start wherever you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I've been working in the energy and utilities sector for over 20 years now. I started out in the United Kingdom and then did a few years in Brazil before moving down under to Australia back in 2008. And it's been incredible to see how things have changed in that time. 20 years ago, utilities was really just all about getting your electricity and gas bill once every 3 months. And now it's much more front and center with most people.
Yeah, interesting. Actually, off the little side track, how does Australia compare to Brazil in all this renewable transition?
Brazil has a lot of hydro.
Yeah.
So there's a dam called the Itaipu Dam, which gives Brazil 25% of its electricity.
Wow.
I think it gives Paraguay something like 90% of its electricity. Brazil has a lot of hydro, and it's also now going a lot bigger on wind and solar. So it's really catching up.
Yeah. So next question is, who is Kaluza and what is its mission?
So Kaluza is an energy tech platform that enables energy companies to transform their businesses and really unlock the value of this rapidly evolving energy system. And it does that in three main ways. First, it dramatically reduces operating costs.
Mm-hmm.
Second, it boosts customer loyalty and trust. And third, it enables utilities to rapidly build and launch smart energy products and tariffs.
And how's this disrupting the traditional, say, energy incumbents?
Well, our mission at Kaluza is simple. We're on a mission to power an affordable and resilient energy transition for all with no customer left behind. And the challenge of the energy transition is no longer just about generating enough green and affordable energy. It's also about effectively managing, storing, and sharing it. And this is part of the overall shift from a one-directional energy system where we generate electricity centrally and just transmit it to the point of consumption or consumers' homes, to a system in which energy flows in both directions. And Kaluza is really at the forefront of this shift, giving energy companies the tools they need to evolve. So Kaluza's been built to optimize millions of smart devices, from EVs to solar panels to heat pumps. And this is what's transforming the energy landscape into a dynamic, self-balancing system that can reward customers as well as the planet.
Yeah. And I guess too, part of this shifting away from this one-way street is also enabling, say, peer-to-peer energy transfer. So if it's a hot sunny day here in Perth and it's the UV rating at the moment is extreme, I've got solar panels on the roof, it's generating a lot of electricity. I can actually then on sell to someone who hasn't got solar panels on the roof and not rely on, say, the coal power fire station down Collie. Is that the sort of thing we're looking at as well?
Yeah, exactly. I think increasingly we're going to be seeing consumers become active participants in the energy market. And that's just the sort of thing we're expecting to see more of. So if I've got all this excess generation, then why don't I sell it back into the grid where somebody else can use it?
Fantastic. And how is it progressing in the Australian market, and what sort of milestones have we achieved so far?
Oh, thanks for asking. Well, Kaluza's made significant strides in the Australian market. Our first customer was OVO Energy Australia, and that was a joint venture between AGL here in Australia and OVO in the UK. And since replatforming onto Kaluza, OVO here in Australia has seen some really great results. It's tripled its customer numbers. So right now it has about 100,000 customers. And at the same time, it's become much more efficient. So call center agents are now able to serve far more customers. And OVO has nearly halved the cost to serve each customer. And those customers are really engaged as well. OVO's got a customer satisfaction score of 98%, as well as a net promoter score of plus 40. And that is way higher than the Australian industry average, which is just plus 5. And OVO's been able to launch some really exciting new energy plans really quickly. On average, it's taken them just 16 calendar days for each product from inception to launch. And then building on that joint venture, earlier this year, we announced a partnership between Kaluza and AGL to drive their retail transformation. And we're really looking forward to seeing them realize some of the benefits that Kaluza can bring.
And on the flip side too, what's sort of holding the Australian market back for a full-on renewable energy transition at the moment?
I guess so many things, Dave, and so many different ways that question could be answered. I think a lot of things that are happening in Australia are very positive. We have world-leading penetration of rooftop solar. We are, as a country, ideally suited to wind and solar. We've got some of the best wind and solar resources in the world, as well as, importantly, the space to build it all out. That's something that a lot of people in smaller countries don't really appreciate, just how big Australia is. I think policy and politics are the two things that really get in the way here. I think we've seen some good policies come in under the current federal government, and investment in wind and solar as well as storage has seen a bit of an uptick now. But with 3-year government cycles, a lot of discussion about technology such as nuclear being better or not, I think this sort of stuff just has the potential to slow down progress. It's a bit of a distraction.
Yeah, and we can say the N-word here on the show. I like to be objective and scientific as possible, so it's all good, but it's good too. I mean, over here in Western Australia, we've got wind, solar, tidal up north. So we're really well positioned. I think that's quite the case around the country. I mean, don't forget, in the Northern Territory, we've got a big solar farm that's powering Singapore, or is about to power Singapore. So
it's amazing. We've got these really world-leading projects in the pipeline in Australia. And I don't have anything against nuclear myself. I think nuclear is a great low-carbon technology. It's just that for Australia, it's potentially not the best solution. And we just got to face the fact that it can be expensive and it can take a very long time to build.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think that we're looking at the wrong examples too, because we've looking at nuclear from Scandinavia, where it's dark, cold in winter, but we don't get that dark and cold in winter. I just have to ram home that point too. Moving right on to EVs, can you explain in more detail what vehicle-to-grid technology is and how does it benefit customers and the grid?
Yeah, sure. In a nutshell, vehicle-to-grid is using the energy stored in your electric vehicle battery to support the grid. But I think to fully answer your question, you should probably take a step back and look at why why do we think EV sales are going to pick up so much? So first of all, there's a benchmark price for batteries of $100 per kilowatt hour. And for many years now, that has been considered the benchmark at which the price of an electric vehicle matches the price of an equivalent petrol or diesel vehicle. Well, in China now, battery pack prices have reached $75 per kilowatt hour. And so EVs can now be priced at or below internal combustion engine vehicles in most segments. Wow. And in China, almost 2/3 of the EVs available are already cheaper than their internal combustion engine equivalent. And that's China. That's the world's biggest car market. But there are obviously other markets around the world, and we expect that price advantage to extend to international markets over the next couple of years because new and more affordable electric models are going to be launched outside of China. And so once you reach that point where an EV is cheaper than its equivalent petrol or diesel car, then it becomes, it makes economic sense to buy the EV. I think that is the upfront price is the thing that is the biggest sticking point at the moment. And so once you do that, when you get your next car, you'll also be getting a massive battery. And that's why sometimes we call EVs batteries on wheels. It really is a big battery. So it's several times bigger than stationary or wall batteries like the Tesla Powerwall. So an EV battery can store enough energy to power a typical home for up to a week, even longer if the home's got rooftop solar.
Wow.
And these consumer batteries are going to be really useful. So the first thing they'll do is allow consumers to become more self-sufficient. Rooftop solar generates mostly in the middle of the day, but the average consumer tends to consume most of their energy in the morning and in the evening. But a battery can store that midday solar and then power the house in the evening and potentially through the night and into the next day as well. But it's not just about the consumer's home. They can support the grid as well. And you might think that one person's battery can't do that much, but if we can coordinate large numbers of these batteries, then they can really make a difference. And that's what we call vehicle to grid. So as an example, Dave, you might remember a couple of weeks ago, there was a heat wave in New South Wales. The air conditioners were all working really hard. So demand was really high. But on top of that, there were outages at a load of coal and gas plants. So supply was tight as well. And people were being asked to avoid running unnecessary appliances because there was a threat of blackouts.
Yeah.
Well, batteries can help with that. By discharging into the grid, they can add to the available supply and reduce that risk of blackouts. And the funny thing is, the following week, we actually had the opposite problem. So then there was too much rooftop solar. In the middle of the day, when demand is low, there was all this rooftop solar generation flooding the market. And what that means is we don't need to use the grid scale generators as much. And when operational demand on the grid gets really low, the grid can become unstable. And batteries can help with that as well. By charging up at times like these, they can add to the demand and help to soak up all that rooftop solar. Again, reducing the risk of blackouts.
Interesting. Actually, that really asked my question, how we're keeping up many more energy demands are shaping around for renewable supply, but I think that's really been answered. That's a really good point there. Now, Gavin, as this podcast is about the future and time of recording is 2024, it's going out in 2025, but what do you think about the world in 2030 and beyond? How do you see Australia's energy landscape, or how do you envision?
For me, Dade, I think one of the most significant and important changes is going to be the emergence of the consumer as an active participant in the energy market. If you look at what we've got right now, it's still early days. So consumers are generating their own electricity through rooftop solar, and they're often exporting it in the middle of the day. But for the most part, they're not doing much more than that. And that's about 1/3 of Australian households. And generally, it's more the really engaged early adopter type of consumer who are participating in schemes like vehicle to grid trials or demand response trials. But I think this will increasingly become automated until consumers are naturally supporting the grid with their rooftop solar generation, with their EV batteries and their other smart devices, and being rewarded for that without even having to think about it. And I think this is part of a broader shift in the energy system. If you look at our energy system today, for decades, we've had a system where we generate enough electricity to match demand at any one point in time. But I think we're going to be shifting to a system where increasingly we are shifting demand to match the available supply.
Wow.
And as a concept, this shouldn't be too alien to people. Take the example of hot water. For about 70 years, most electric hot water systems in Australia have been running overnight. And that's not because people want to take a shower in the middle of the night. It's because coal plants have been supplying most of our generation. And coal plants don't like to ramp up and down. They're not that flexible. But demand is low overnight. So to avoid ramping down the coal plants, we increased demand overnight. And that's where this overnight hot water legacy has come from. And that's a really simple thing to switch to running in the middle of the day to soak up all that rooftop solar.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we wrap things up, is there anything I didn't ask but should?
I think what's important for me is that we need to take consumers on this journey. I think they don't want to have to think about the transition. We just need to make it happen for them. We need to do this automation orchestration for them. So as an example, I am currently a customer with Ovo Energy Australia. And earlier this year, I signed up to one of those exciting new energy plans that they launched really quickly. So it's an EV charging tariff. And that means it offers cheap overnight electricity, which is common for this sort of tariff. But where this one is different is it offers completely free electricity in the middle of the day between 11 and 2. Now that's great. But to take full advantage of all that unlimited free electricity in the middle of the day, as a consumer, I need to remember to plug in the car at that time. I need to remember to turn on the heating or the air conditioning at that time to take advantage of it. And I think that's the issue. I am quite an engaged consumer, but the average consumer doesn't want to spend their time thinking about energy. And so in the next iteration of this tariff, what we've done at Kaluza, we've added a layer of orchestration. So we've added integration to solar inverters and the EV, as well as the wholesale market and solar forecast. And what we can do now is charge the car based on when the consumer needs the car charged by, as well as when electricity is cheapest and greenest. So as a consumer, all I need to do is plug the car in, tell the app what state of charge I'd like and by when, and the tech takes care of the rest. I think that's what we need. We need to make the transition easy for consumers.
Yeah. I guess too, like most revolutions, you just don't know your path until it's too late. So it's a really nice, neat way to think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And finally, Gavin, enjoying a chat this morning. Where else can we find you?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Dave, so I'm always happy to connect with people there and engage in a good discussion about the energy transition.
Fantastic. I'll make sure those are in the show notes. Gavin, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure, Dave.
And thank you to Gavin and Kaluza for his input, and the team once again at Sling and Stone for putting me into touch with one of their great clients. I feel that these guys do an amazing job. PR people should get more praise in the podcasting world for getting in touch, connecting with hosts with great guests. Coming up next week, we're looking at from the top down and the future of C-Suite. I know it sounds boring, but it could be a very interesting title coming up. It's coming up next week here on The Friendly Futurist. The Friendly Futurist is a podcast West production and produced and edited by me, Dave Monk. If you love this show, please give us a 5-star review on your Spotify platform. And speaking of which, yes, thank you to all the future heads in Australia for making me your number one country. I know it's great to have a homegrown feel to it. I try to get as many homegrown tech startup stories as possible on this show, and it pays off. So thank you once again. Until next time, friends, remember to stay curious. The future is user-friendly.
Another Podcasts West production.
This podcast is just for educational purposes and it's not financial advice. I'm not a financial planner or advisor. Please do your homework and seek professional help before you take on any adventures.